Hi everyone, welcome and thank you for joining us today. My name is Jean, the Digital Event Manager at Connecting Up and TechSoup New Zealand. We are part of the Info Exchange Group, a not-for-profit social enterprise that tackles the biggest social challenges by creating use of technology. Today I'm excited to welcome you to join the NFP Retention and HR Governance with Monica and Robert. So we have two lovely speakers today. So Robert is the Partnership Director of ELMO Speakers. He has over 25 years local and international business experience and is passionate about empowering HR practitioners to expand and improve their people and process capabilities through the use of innovative technology. And also we have Monica Watts today. She's the Chief Human Resources Officer of ELMO Speakers across Australia and New Zealand and United Kingdom. She has more than 20 years of experience leading business operations, compliance, human resources in public, private, not-for-profit, academic, and government sectors. Monica is committed to bringing people, practice, and technology together. All right, before we begin, we'll start with a bit of housekeeping. All lines are muted. If you have any technical issues, please type into the questions box and I'm here to assist you. If you have any questions during the webinars, please also type into the questions box. Robert and Monica will be very happy to get them answered by the end. And also, we really encourage you to ask as many questions as possible. Make it interactive. No questions is silly. Please note that your comments and questions will not be up here to the entire group. And now the webinar is being recorded. The recording deck and the slides will be sent to you in 1 to 2 business days. Finally, I would like to remind you there's a very short survey at the end. It would be great if you can help us to complete that. All right, I'll now hand over to Robert and Monica for today's section. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yes. Hello, everybody, and welcome to our session on retention and HR governance for the not-for-profit sector. All right. So, as mentioned, I'm Robert, and I'm joined by our Chief HR Officer, Monica, today. Just quickly, the not-for-profit sector is our largest sector, and it's the fastest growing. I run the partnership business for ELMO, and we have some really strong, dedicated partners that specifically focus on the not-for-profit space, such as Connecting Up. Monica, would you like to just enrich your,
Yes.
your details? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Great to be here, folks. I am Monica Watt. I've been with ELMO for the last 7.5 years, and I started my HR career in 2003, so 19 years, coming up to, yes, heading towards my 20th year in human resources itself. I started in a not-for-profit organisation as the very first HR representative with, I think we had more than 200 employees across 8 different campuses, and it was a very interesting journey. I also still work with a not-for-profit organisation today. I find it the most valuable, I think, and not so much valuable, it's the fact that we have a lot that we can contribute and a lot that we can value, and we can make a greater impact. So it's great that we can harmonise and find some relationship between all of the different sectors, and it's great that we can be here from ELMO.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So, guys, I just wanted to firstly point out a lot of the data that you'll be seeing today is comes from a survey that we've done. This is the 3rd year running that we've just completed it. It's called the HR Industry Benchmark Report, and we do it in conjunction with ARI, the Australian Human Resources Institute, that we're a major member of. Excuse me. Look, from the latest survey, which we've really only recently compiled the data, and there's a lot of data behind this, 3 key themes came out, and you can see them there. Employee expectations have fundamentally changed. What does that mean? That means that employees are not saying, please don't pay me anymore, I want other things. They're saying, please continue to pay me, but I also want other things from you, my employer. The war for talent is back in full swing, as I'm sure all of you are aware. And the last one that's come through quite strongly is HR. The role of HR is continuing to evolve, and the ride isn't over yet. And it's to that point, I'd like to ask Monica, would you like to comment on that last point, please?
It's a very interesting question. I think about in the last 2 years, we've actually become a mix of being a superhero and a villain, but depending on the organisation that we've been sitting in. Fundamentally, HR's we're the architect of the people experience, and we mirror to our business and our leaders how our people are thinking and feeling. And ultimately, the evolution is we need to advocate to the business, but also to be the advocate of the business to the people, because we are commercial. If something has really come to light for the last couple of years, is that commercial reality to optimize our people. What do we do by engaging our people? The relationship, which you highlighted in the very first point, has fundamentally changed. It's no longer a them and us. It's a relationship to achieve common goals, purpose, and impact. The other thing that I think that is critical, is obviously we've had to become technology specialists as we focused on, remote work and bringing distributed teams, using data to tell the stories, protecting our business through cybersecurity. Really fundamental. There's a really good quote, I think, that I'll just lean into here. I know I'm taking a bit of time, Robert. There's a really good quote by one of my favourite leaders, Peter Drucker, and it says the best way to predict the future is to create it. And I think that's what we are doing in HR, regardless of the sector. That's what we're doing right now.
That's a big call, Monica, but I like it. Also on that survey, there's really 3 key opportunities, and in many ways this is the other side of the same coin. So we talked about the new employee experience, or employees demanding more than just a salary, and I guess we or yourselves as HR practitioners, particularly in the not-for-profit, have the opportunity to create a new employee experience. The second thing is, how do we help HR people to work smarter, not harder? And we will get into that in a little bit of detail, but really technology is the key. And then again, the third point is, how do we help strengthen HR's position with deeper knowledge and use of key people metrics? And Monica, how have you done that in your role here at ELMO, and how have you seen it being done by your peers?
Interesting journey that we are on. There is a wealth of data, and we've seen that in a couple of the surveys over the last couple of years, is HR's use of data. Now, we are moving through a journey of almost analysis paralysis because there is so much data, and what we need to be doing is unpacking and saying, what I'm doing, and I know what my peers are doing, what we're all doing, is what is the outcome that we're trying to achieve, and work back from there, instead of being bombarded by all the amounts of data that is coming in, whether it's to do with our absenteeism, presenteeism, turnover, time to fill, vacancy, time to market, all of those types of things, learning and development journeys. There's so much that we need to be focusing on, but what is it? Why? We always need to know why. And leveraging the technology stack, whether it's for automating as much as we can, because remember, we want to be automating to give more time back to the people, back to the business, and that's definitely enabling that. I liken the fact that I guess I'm really balanced. I work for as the leader for HR in a HR tech company, and what that means though is the ability, very different to what I have in other organisations where I've had multiple point solutions, multiple login details. So technology has evolved and is adapting, first of all, to give me and my team more time back into the business, which goes back to the people, and try and remove some of the admin burdens. The other thing it's enabling to do is bringing all the resources into one area, all the source points of information, and from that, you're actually able to draw the data on how people are using technology, what is being used, how is it beneficial? Because in my opinion and in my experience, technology for technology's sake is not great. Technology has to be delivering a purpose. And if you've got technology that is causing and taking more time for you, then you need to switch that off. And the only way you can do that is through your reporting through technology.
Yeah, absolutely. No, good point. Thank you, Monica. Okay. So guys, what we've been hearing is the employees are looking for more than just a paycheck, and we're in the middle of a talent war. So really the strategy has to be about retention. So here's a little bit of data that can feed into this. Now, this data actually comes from a slightly different survey that we also run, the Employee Sentiment Index. And what it clearly shows is remuneration in all its forms, bonuses, payments, incentives, is the #1 thing. And I think, you know, I'd be hard pressed to be convinced that that will ever change. Flexible and remote working is something that a lot of people are demanding, and stability of organization, which I think is a really interesting one, coming in at #3. Now, our report goes through the top 10, so this is the top 3, but that's a really interesting one to come in as a third point. What would be useful, folks, is I would really love at this point some of your thoughts as to whether you would agree with those top 3. What are the top 3 that you're seeing? If you could put those comments into the chat function, that'd be really, really helpful. And we can talk about that maybe at the Q&A piece at the end. Now, the case for retention is obviously clear, you know, but this is yet another key point that I think is important to make. Over the last 2 years, the average cost just to fill a vacancy has gone up from 10.5 grand in 2020 to 23,860. So in round numbers, 24K. That's a massive increase. And the number of days taken to fill that vacancy has gone up, and this is an average from 33 to 38. Now, you know, Monica, maybe you'd like to comment on this. I know some industries find it, you know, would love a 38-day vacancy hole, but
yes, and I think we're talking to a great cohort here in the NFP sector that, you know, they have a larger length, because there's also other hidden costs of losing and having to replace an employee, which is why we're here. We're talking about retention. With those other industries, tech is a really good example of that, you know, carving that out. Sometimes it can be up to 60+ days. Maybe, you know, team that you're online, you know, if you want to pop it in the chat, you know, what you're seeing, you know, how are you finding, you know, how are you finding it out there, you know, getting the right talent, how long is it taking you and how much time is it taking your team? But fundamentally, we have seen a magnificent leap, an absolute magnificent leap in that cost to fill. So hence the retention is key. And I'm really pleased that we're talking about that today.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, that's just the direct cost. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, just a quick question from one of our audience. So the $, do you mean Australian dollars, please?
Yes.
Yep. All right. Thank you. Hope that answers your question, Jackie.
But of course, as I was just saying, that's just the direct cost. What about the productivity loss of that person walking out and the knowledge that they take with them? If that person was a much loved employee, the impact of the morale of the rest of the team that's remaining, and of course the productivity time of HR and the hiring manager of you know, having to take away from their day-to-day to actually interview and replace that employee. None of that is reflected in that $24,000. So I think there is a significantly wider cost and probably you know, a larger cost to the business on that. Monica, have you got any comments on that?
The relational impost is really great, especially we've gone through 2 years of crisis and calamity, regardless of sectors. Some have had harder than others. But the relationship dynamics has changed, and we've seen a lot of this that have occurred, and our data shows, you know, when we've onboarded people remotely as well, you know, their retention has been less because the sense of community and the engagement that we've got, you know, so the rapport and that trust development, you know, whilst it's grown, has been less, and that's been really hard for teams to gain traction. And when you know, and you've all seen this, when you've been in relationships with team members and it just hasn't been successful, you carry a bit of that forward into the next relationship, and you hope that it's going to maintain, it's going to be better, but you've always got that in the back of your mind as well. So there's a resistance there that is occurring. I think that's something, the emotional and personal impacts really do need to be, it's not only about morale, but the emotional and personal connections, which we don't have a dollar figure for. We need to factor in. That's a real key part of our wellness and well-being.
Yeah, and it would be very, very difficult to assign a dollar figure, but as you say, you still need to recognize it and understand it.
Yes.
So folks, just speaking to that, going back to our survey that we talked about at the beginning, looking at those retention areas and some of the challenges that people are reporting to us. 41% of respondees said they cannot compete with external market rates, and I would imagine the not-for-profit sector would be high in amongst that. And more important, or just as importantly, 32% said there's a misalignment between performance and remuneration. And I'm sure all of us that have been around for a little while can, you know, maybe taking off our business hats, recognize or think of a situation where we've seen where a person that we might consider B grade being paid an A grade rate, and vice versa. I can certainly think of times where that's happened in my past. And then when looking at the top focus areas, improving retention is obviously critical because of everything we've just spoken about. It's always going to be cheaper to keep your good staff than replace them. Monica, how do you see this applying to not-for-profits specifically?
Yeah. Interestingly, given, you know, as I expressed it when we started, I started in a not-for-profit, and because I also am engaged with a not-for-profit today, I get it, I see it, I feel it, I hear it. It's a mantra that we have, you know, in trying to retain and avoid the burnout, because that's what's happening. The reason people are on a journey, and I think when we think about, yes, we can't compete, right? And nor should we compete. We're not part of the sector. We're not part of a commercial sector that is in purely for profit and revenue. We're in for profit, yes, and we're in for profit to return into the operations and that improving retention. There's some key things that I think that we kind of need to note. In these last 2 years, we've seen a drop in all of our migrants, you know, skilled migrants inside Australia in particular. So we're still, this time, at the start of this year through the ABS, we're still sitting about 220,000 short, right? Really interesting. So which means the competition, that misalignment or that can't compete is, okay, you're preaching to the converted. This is like Captain Obvious kind of stuff. You can't compete, nor should you. What we do need to change in some of these areas is actually how we brand what we're trying to do in a not-for-profit sector, you know, and it's the same, we're trying to change some of our language that we're using, and this comes into the retention piece, you know, as well as the misalignment. Some of the language that we need to really change, you know, with that mindset and language and sentiment, if we don't change that, it's actually gonna stay, because we know a not-for-profit is a business. It is in to generate a profit. It is to improve operations and to give more value back to the business. And I think if I hear one more time, and those that are online will probably say the same thing, you know, if I hear one more time, I can't pay you that much, but I can help you make a difference, I think I'm going to cry. Purpose, you know, well, it is, you know, and I think about this all the time. Purpose, yes, it's important. But contribution and impact is more important in a post-COVID world. I've heard of carers, you know, who get asked, we've seen it on the news, we've heard it ourselves, you know, my daughter's a carer and nurse, and I hear this time and time over again, get asked, you know, why would they be in such a hard job, you know, paid little? Really great question to set the scene, by the way, you know, and the questioner herself thinks it's hard and worthless or whatever else. And a great carer who will reflect on that, you know, has said, you know, yeah, in these last 2 years, I've been working with my client. Today, my client fed themselves. It's taken 6 months, and today my client waved to another person. You know, it's taken 12 months, and today my client applied for a job. It's not about the money, because you'll never compete on money. What we do need to do, it's about the impact that they're making and how they feel from being there. When we focus on the impact, then we've got a chance at retention, a stronger chance at retention, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Because we can't compete on salaries. We can't compete. And yes, there is a misalignment between performance and payment. And the reason being, you've seen it in all sectors. We've got 4 sectors. We've seen it in all. When you need somebody to fill a job, that they're paid for it. And any person in a seat is better than no person in a seat. And when you're trying to hold on to budget, in my experience, when I've been trying to hold to budget, not here at ELMO, I'll say, that it's like, if I empty that seat and I'm going into another budget cycle or another priority is given, does that mean I'm going to lose that? So I'm better off holding somebody that's there. Our job is saying, okay, let's work towards the outcomes. Let's work towards what does good performance look like? What does being part of our team look like? And what impact are you making by doing that? And I think through that, we can talk to those 3 top areas.
Yeah, really, really interesting discussion, Monica. And yeah, I agree. My wife works in the NDIS, and she absolutely loves it when her clients you know, go through a massive change like you were describing. So I absolutely understand. So look, case for retention is very clear, as we've just been speaking about. So what can be done? And going back again to our survey, the first key thing that can be done is look at workplace flexibility opportunities, whether that's start finish times, part-time work, leave without pay, and so on and so forth. Hybrid work is one of the big buzzwords at the moment, and ELMO certainly has embraced that. We have a 2 days a week from home policy at this stage, and we track to that. Monica, have you got any thoughts on how this could possibly apply to NFPs?
Yeah, the flexible start and finish time is interesting, and it depends on the environment, depends on the clients, you know, but that is something to work with. We are no longer time bound. You know, it needs to be, what are we trying to achieve? Remember, it's coming back to what is the impact that we're trying to make. And when we're focusing on our people and their well-being and saying, well, we're not clock watchers, and we acknowledge the fact that you're doing a really good job, and we acknowledge that you're trying to hold on to top performers as well as just employees or people. I want to remove the word employees, just saying it's either people or workers, right? And the reason why I shift and try and remove the word employees is because it comes down to the old mantra of a different relationship, you know, and, you know, which doesn't necessarily is not a positive one. So if we're talking about our people, you know, as a whole, you know, their people, it's their well-being. We know that people are exhausted. We've got less people on the ground. We've got more hours, more impacts through mental health, more impact through on the services, the NDIS, which you've mentioned that your wife works in. When you're thinking about that, whilst we don't have greater budgets, you know, and really you'll burn people out just using the mission purpose because they've got bills and lives, you know, that they need to live. It's actually balancing in that and saying, okay, how can I contribute to your life and your well-being whilst you contribute to the impact and the purpose that we're trying to achieve as an organisation? Because some of these aren't going to work. You know, if you've got a client that, you know, just reflecting personally, okay. I have a son who's gone through many journeys, you know, and has very prescriptive requirements. And if the carer didn't arrive at a certain time, then the likelihood of my child having a mental breakdown and not surviving through the day isn't going to work. But it's about working around those specific areas. So the flexible start and finish times can be working around the administration time, can be focused on, okay, how much, if you're using automation, if we can engage technology, then that means you don't have to do it so much paperwork and administration. If we can get you linked into online free wellness meditation groups, any of the sorts of community things that we can do that says we've pulled the resource and available for you to at least help you decompress, because we can't decompress from the work, because we've already talked about we're already oversubscribed, we don't have enough people, and those that we do, we want to make sure that we're retaining them. So finding different ways and means to help compress. Time in lieu is really hard in a not-for-profit organisation. You know, I don't know any individual that's in a full-time position that works a standard, you know, 38-hour week. It's just not. Robert, leaning into your own wife, you know, and my own experience itself. There's a lot of love. You know, we do this for love. And I say this respectfully, there's my another $1.50 today when I work in, and because it's about that mission, that purpose. What we need to do, however, here is when we come to workplace flexibility is asking people, engaging with people, connecting with people, concerning, sorry, I just had somebody walk in the door. Connecting with people, asking your people, because flexibility might not work, part-time work might not work, leave without pay, time in lieu. You need to be talking to each of your cohorts and say, you know, how can we give you a little bit more with the less that we've actually got? Yeah.
So these are all great, but they need to be specific for the individual person. Absolutely makes perfect sense.
Yeah, it certainly does. You know, when you go, sorry, keep going.
Okay, so the second I guess strategy here or part to the program is one of employee well-being. You know, there's employee assistance programs, which a lot of people, 70% of people said that they have in their organization, mental health days, health insurance coverage, and so on. You can all read it there. Gym memberships, yoga and meditation, which is something that we do at ELMO. But it's interesting that 8% didn't have any of those sorts of things. So, Monica, do you want to drill down on any of this?
Yeah, look, I think it's interesting that the rise of mental health days and programs. If you think of the world that we've just been in, we're coming into organisations, back into workplaces, and using Brené Brown's, you know, language. You know, we're hardwired to connect, but we've also got challenges in coming back to connect because we're already fatigued, we're already burnt out. And so the importance of wellness days, wellness moments, whilst an organisation may not be able to relinquish a person on a full-time, you know, lose a whole day, but it's creating wellness moments, wellness spaces. Whether it's, you know, having wellness programs on your phone, you know, having a dedicated chair that sits, that, you know, has an iPad there with headphones, or an app, a free app, it doesn't really matter. The thing is some of these don't need to cost, and I think that's what we've even done as an organisation. What can we do? We have a large community here at ELMO, and part of that large community is saying, how can you help each other, and how can we support you to do that? And if that means, you know, we've got walk clubs, we've got run clubs, we've got the meditation, we have colouring, you name it. We've got so many different things that aren't costing us money, but they're costing a bit of time. And the bit of that time has been connected by our people, and the primary focus has been on their well-being. We thank you, we acknowledge you, we support you, we appreciate you. But like an elastic band, you know, that is going through some, and you know, and is really tight. It's trying to release that by saying, can you please take some time for you? Can you please connect with you? We do have plenty of other activities. So the employee assistance programs, which is really good to see. We've seen a large increase of that in the last couple of years. I do find it interesting, you know, that there's 8% that don't, and I don't know the size of those organisations, but I'd hazard a guess to say that a manager is talking to their team members, or their team members are sitting down in the, you know, in the common room having lunch. They're not being captured as wellbeing or wellness spaces. And I think we've got a bigger opportunity to say, well, we don't have the funds, we don't have the resources, but we have the sense of community, and what can we do to help lean into that? Our CSR piece, and we know as a not-for-profit that we are, we have sponsors, we've got government agencies, we've also got donors. There are various other support mechanisms that we do have. Whilst we're all competing for those, we still do have them. And our obligation to report back to those sponsors and fund groups, we do need to report back in what we're doing, because whilst we're looking after our clients and caretaking them, we also have the same obligation to ourselves. And I think that's something that we need to do much more deliberately and strategically, in saying, you know, we're caring for our clients, but we're also caring for our employees, and that they are, on a scale of justice, they should be the same. Because the minute you burn out your employee, you know, then the pain point of your client exceeds, and it's hard to recalibrate again.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay. So the third tranche, I guess, is the one that we can't escape, which is remuneration and benefits. But how best to tie that to performance management? And our view is it's pretty simple. In theory, it's a simple, you know, it's a simple formula. Identify your best performers, pay and reward your best performers, which will lead you to keeping your best performers. But then that's a pretty tricky formula to actually do objectively and be seen to be done objectively. Monica, how do you see that happening in the real world?
Yeah, in the real world, it's interesting when you think, you know, the top was rem and benefits, right? Pay rises. There's lots of, you know, they say there's lots of candidates in the market. Interestingly, you know, when you look at Australia, we're at 4% employment rate, which actually fundamentally means that every person possible in Australia is now gainfully employed. Now, remembering that's at 3 hours, just a 3-hour shift, right? But it tells you, yes, right? So to be on that list, the minimum requirements is you just have to be gainfully employed for a minimum of 3 hours, which is a shift, a minimum of 3 hours, you know, a week. Right, and so that means you're a part of the stats. And so I think we have an opportunity to say, well, okay, we know that there are people in the market and the candidates as well that are out there. And your formula, I appreciate. It's an easy to read kind of formula, but it is easier than done. Because how do we do this? How do we do this objectively and seem to be doing it fairly as well as objectively? When you're looking at the value of your top performer, you know, are you actually evaluating your top performer, or are you just grateful that you've got people that are there? Because you mentioned this earlier, Robert, you know, with the misalignment between performance and remuneration as well. And you've got people, and I don't want to, and this isn't just for not-for-profit, this is for all organisations. If you've got somebody who's able to get their job done, their task done, you know, in half the time. Robert, let's say you're able to do something a hell of a lot quicker at me, 4 hours versus my 8 hours. And an organisation says, well, hello, Robert's doing faster, so let me just throw more work at him, right?
Yeah.
So, and in actual fact, you know, Robert's work then declines to the fact that he then becomes disenfranchised. Sorry, I'm talking about you in the third person. Robert, you then decline.
That's fine.
And then your performance diminishes, whereas I'm still constant at my 8 hour. And so I think the measuring of our top performers also needs to be equalised. Just because somebody has time doesn't mean we need to fill it. And that comes back into our wellness and our wellbeing spaces. The other thing to note is the output and the cultural impact on others, which is what we've talked about. You know those, you've all been in, we've all studied, we've all been in groups, we've all worked in a team group assignments, and you've got those that carry the weight versus those that don't, and you can feel the disenfranchise that occurs, and the same happens in our workplace. And that impact is the morale is reduced. So looking at how the capacity and capability, the fairness and distribution of work, just because somebody is saying to you, yeah, I can load me up, I can do more, doesn't mean you should. But also just because somebody else says I can't, I don't have the time, doesn't mean that you shouldn't be analysing that individual, analysing that work to turn around and say, you know, how are we going to consider with that? So I think we do need to do a little bit more on that and aligning and saying, well, who are our top performers? I don't want to discount that nobody is not performing. Let's be very clear. And if they aren't, they're probably in your 1% and they're not going to be in your organisation for very long. Because if you're measuring, you're recording, you're having conversations, and you're being consistent in that approach, they'll either self-select or you'll select them out. Simple as that. But ultimately, acknowledge your performers, identify those performers. If you can't pay them more, then reward them more. Is it the fact that you give them more opportunity to develop their leadership skills? Is it the fact that you give them a different job path? Is it the fact I very much encourage career pathways? In a not-for-profit organisation, yes, somebody comes into a job, but you have a dynamic organisation and opportunity for career pathways. There are many ways rewarding your best performers, you know, setting their career up, because not-for-profit, like every other organisation, you want people to come in your organisation and know that their career is going to be with you. And that's what we really want to be doing with your best performers. Yeah. And that's how you're going to do them.
Well said, Monica, thank you. So where does the role of tech fit into all of this? And if you remember at the beginning, Monica herself talked a lot about the productivity gains that she's seen as we've rolled out, HR tech at various places where at Monica's worked, and obviously at ELMO, we are in the game of selling that kind of technology, and we use it ourselves. But in the survey, as you can see here, 63% of people said that that's their time consumption is general admin work. So just imagine, based on what we've just seen here, HR needs to develop a strategy around flexible work and better employee outcomes and health benefits and so on and so forth to meet the challenge of employee demand, but also the hot marketplace as it is at the moment. And if they're spending 63% of their time on general admin work, they're not going to be able to achieve that. So if we can chew into that and reduce that, then that time for strategy will be made available. Monica, in your own experience, how have you seen that play out?
Tech, when used well, is brilliant, right? Let's be clear. It helps to make jobs easier, assists in decision makings, but when it doesn't work well, it's time consuming and costly. I've already mentioned, I really am blessed to lead, HR in a HR tech company. And I have a single solution that talks to each other. I've worked in many organisations with point solutions, multiple passwords that are frustrating. In my opinion and in my experience, technology should amplify our people. It should take work from them, not give them more work. Security is important. That's become a really important in my area. We've just gone through ISO 27001, and which is our accreditation, so which is our information security, and I'm the executive sponsor for that. I'm highly passionate about managing sensitive data and storage. Technology enables us to prevent or reduce the human impacts in the process. But also the adoption of technology in the HR world itself is actually necessary to cross-skill and upskill our people, as it boosts productivity. It has the ability to increase creativity, improves the overall employee engagement and experience. And when you think about, as the demand for talent rises, you know, we are continuously going to be looking for better, you know, software solutions that helps us to do that. And as I'd already mentioned, when you think where our current employment level is right now, you need to think, how are we going to do all this work with not as many workers that we've currently got? And so technology, especially in the hybrid, distributed, whatever world of work that we're in, creating those moments that matter, the ability to connect, you know, the ability to have these conversations. We've just finished talking about performance and remuneration, acknowledging, using technology. So Robert, you know, you're having a conversation with your leader, I'm having the conversation with your leader, and the conversation is the same because the structure is the same. It's equitable.
Yeah.
You know, so checks and balances from there. So it helps to remove bias. There's a lot here. You know, when it comes to those top areas, but when you think about it, we are laden, we are burdened down, not only because of the compliance factors of what we've got to do, we've now got the security measures that come through in a digital world. And so we need to become more au fait with technology and give ourselves back the time so we can actually work with our people more and help our businesses to be successful.
Absolutely. Yep. Again, well said. Okay, so folks, it's not only us saying it, but if you have a look at this, this is, I think, the last of our charts from the survey. The sort of pinky purpley color is those organizations that have fully deployed a solution in the column that it's talking about, and the sort of greeny color is those that are projected to have completed. In other words, in the survey they're saying, well, we haven't got a performance management solution yet, but we will have one by the end of the year fully implemented. So if you have a look at the performance management, 45% of the respondees said that they had one completed in 2021, and the 82% are saying, well, we were on the path and we'll have it completely done by the end of 2022. So it's really interesting that we are seeing a lot of people saying, yes, we're on the path, we want to get there. Now, that doesn't mean that everybody's going to achieve that, but the interesting thing is that HR professionals, who were the ones that we surveyed, are saying this is where they want to be by the end of the year, and so there is momentum there. Monica, is there anything you'd like to share, maybe perhaps on work health and safety and the workforce planning numbers there that were really interesting?
They were interesting, and I think WHS is now combined with the WHS and E, so it's the environment. Part of the WHS is also our wellness and wellbeing programs. It's not just to do with bricks and mortar. Yeah. And so the obligation that we now have, we're seeing a level of fatigue, our people being burnt out, the society being burnt out, the society having an opinion, so conflicts are raising. There's a lot that we're having to work through. So I can see wholeheartedly why WHS has really pushed up. And I think it will continue to push up whilst we have some harmonisation of how the people, the environment and mental health obligations all collide and are now sitting within that key space. Also falls in strongly into our inclusive workplaces. Part of that is saying, well, in a distributed format, and we don't have bricks and mortars. You already talked about we're hybrid, you know, so we're at least 2 days working remote a week. Some are more, some are less. The inclusive nature means the reach into those that may not be able to be in the workplace. So WHS also means not only our bricks and mortar, but we're looking at people that are working remotely, so from their homes, from other locations, from the office. So our obligations in WHS in ensuring that they are working in a safe environment has increased. Workforce planning is another one. You're using technology, you're having to do less, more with less, you know, so how are we going to do that? We're using technology to upskill and cross-skill people. The other thing that's worth noting is through workforce planning is we're leveraging more on what people are doing outside of the workplace. So what other skills and experiences do they have? So I have a background with the Army Cadets in the Defence Force, and so what skills and experience would I have to be able to bring to my current role that can be used? So not just, hello, Monica's doing a HR role. Let's say I'm a HR business partner and I'm, you know, want to progress inside the business. What else have I got? What are the skills and attributes and abilities? So workforce planning is mapping all the skills and attributes from the workplace, but also outside of the workplace that can actually amplify and support the workplace. We do need to, you know, define the skills and needs of our workforce, you know, for today and tomorrow. This requires, you know, digital skills, data and analytics. I learned my data and analytics through short courses, Udemy and Coursera, you know, $11, $14 a course. I did free Power BI, you know, free Power BI courses. What else have I done? YouTube is brilliant, just saying. YouTube has taught me a lot in helping me to understand, you know, how do I do more with less? How do I build my skills and ability to actually report on the REM? How do I do more of an impact on my wellness into my WHS? There's a lot. It really is about finding ways to grow and learn with the limited means. And these are some things, because the thing is, you know, what is HR working on and the smarter use of technology? It ultimately, you know, it is important for us, it is important for not-for-profits to develop strong leadership, you know, to drive the organisational success and look at new business and financial models to remain sustainable. And this is where using technology, reporting on those, being able to demonstrate the outcomes, being able to demonstrate performance and productivity, be able to demonstrate career pathway planning and development. All of these help for us to remain sustainable, and that's exactly what we need.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the message is there's a lot of people on the bandwagon, and you really don't want to get left behind on this. So certainly, folks, it'd be well worth your while to explore it if you don't have a solution in place at this stage.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So look, we're coming to the close. This is our offering. If you'll all get a copy of this, as you know. So if there's anything on here that you'd like to explore with us, please sing out. Contact details are on the back slide. This is our connecting up page. There's a QR code there for you to zap to go there, but there's also the link down the bottom right hand corner. We have a number of success stories, but this is a good one here. That's a not-for-profit with Kalara. Well worth a quick read if you have the time. And I think this is actually the most important, is we do have a ultimate guide for HR software for not-for-profits. It's well worth checking out as well. Again, the QR code there for you to check it out. And lastly, yeah, this is if you want to contact somebody at ELMO, connect up with Narita. She's part of my team and a bit of a not-for-profit specialist, so she can be a first point of contact at ELMO if you like. Otherwise, please certainly go through connecting up. Can I ask, were there any questions that you'd like us to explore before we finish up?
Thank you very much, Robert and Monica. It's very informative. And then there's lots of tips and insights from you guys. That's excellent. Thank you so much. All right. So Q&A time. Please feel free to type any questions into the questions box. And I'm sure they're very happy to help you with that. All right, we got the first questions come up. So the question is about the slides, the last slide in the chart. There's a wellness program. So about the employee wellness program, what do you think is the top 2 or top 3 most effective programs that we could have?
Okay, well, we certainly have an employee wellness program ourselves, but I can talk a little bit about that. But Monica, do you want to talk about what you've seen best in class?
Yeah, so obviously the obligation of having an EAP, but it's interestingly, EAP doesn't suit everybody, right? Because, and the reason why I say that is that it takes time to build relationships, and whilst you might have a crisis conversation that occurs, it is more focused on that rather than a long-term sustained relationship. What I see as the most successful is our community movements that we have here. So we do have walking groups, we do have walk and talks, we do have lunch and learns as well. So some of those could be, and we have had colouring, we've had a few things that aren't, they don't cost a lot, but they're actually about the relationships that we've got. Those mental health moments, we have them allocated, so every employee has those accessible to them at ELMO. They have one a quarter that can be used at their discretion. That's above their leave entitlements, and that's included whether you're a casual, perm, full-time. Doesn't really matter. They have worked really well. It really does depend on the individuals themselves. You know, you've got EAPs. If you've got an EAP, some EAPs actually have wellbeing apps. We are partnered with Acacia, and part of that, partnership also has financial, because we know the impacts of, if you can't get your finances right, that's going to impact your relationships as well as your work. And so I think ultimately, the question that you need to be asking is, what suits my people? Is it team lunches? We have community days, we have donation days, you name it. We have so many different things. I have 37 cultures here at ELMO, right? I've got more than, like here in Sydney, I have more than, 350 people. And every one of those is discreetly and uniquely different. And so whilst I have all of these programs that we've got on the screen, sorry, I don't have health insurance coverage. That's usually more American based. Anything that I do have, I switch on and switch off, because it's right now. And I can give you some examples where I've had programs previously. I had a jiu-jitsu and there was another program, external program that I had. It was good for a while, then it dropped off, and so I switched it off, right? Just because you start something doesn't mean you need to continue with it. You need to be talking to your people all the time. But I start with free all the time. I don't have a budget. I don't have a grant. What can I get? What can I do for free? And what can my people drive? The thing that I need to do is support that with time. And that's the most important thing. I hope that answers.
We even had a bonsai group, didn't we?
Yeah, yes, we certainly did. And that was an employee. So for that example, so we have had dancing, we've had a gym, meaning exercise. We've had a few things that have been, our employees have done these. We've got a Lego club that's run by our employee. We have a cooking club that's run by employees. We've got a photography club that is run by employees. We facilitate them. And this is all part of wellness and wellbeing. We facilitate, they own. And I think that's what we need to enable spaces that our people can do and be who they want to be in our workplaces. That's the inclusive environment. That's the diversity that we have. Firmly, I believe if you start with inclusive, then you'll have a diverse organisation. But it's not our job. Our job is to facilitate. Sometimes we need to come up with money for it and resourcing, but most of it is we need to support them. If they want to do it, then we'll help them.
100%, absolutely. Thank you so much for the tips. Yeah, I do find that having an ownership is so important. They own that, it's their baby, they nurture that, and then they will feel so different when it is owned by them, and then trying to train and then give some bonding with the other employees. So that's excellent ideas.
Yeah, very much so.
Yep. All right, we got another questions here from Michelle. So thank you for the presentation. It's very informative. Thank you, Monica and Robert. So I got a questions here because most of us are not-for-profit organization having very limited resources. So the entire presentation, there are lots to take away. But if I want to bring home like one or two things that with limited resources that I can implement, execute it next week by Monday, what can I do?
Robert, you take that one, then I'll take that one.
Okay. Well, I guess the themes here are very much one of, what can you do with limited budget, which is, look at flexible work options is something that you could potentially look at straight away. Now, I don't know the culture of your business, and the culture of your business may find that a challenge. Certainly some companies do, but others are quite open to that, and that's something that is not going to be an expensive exercise other than some thoughts around strategy and how you'd want to roll that out. Certainly you'd want to maybe even do a quick survey of your employees to see what kind of flexibility they want, which would go to some of the conversation that Monica gave us around you need to make it as best as you can individual for the individual employee or staff member. But certainly, if you are drowning in with productivity issues around just general mundane work, certainly explore an HRIS, whether it's ours or somebody else's. That's moot. But make sure that it's going to. You do need to make sure it's going to do what you need it to do before you will go and invest in it. And if you don't have budget for this year, start pushing it up the line so that you get some budget allocation for next financial year.
I'll add things a little bit different, not tech related. I would actually start with rewriting your job ads and your position descriptions. Start looking at how you're using the language that says, that we're in a business and what impacts you're going to make. So I would really refocus on the fact that I get really sick of hearing people saying, I'm going to take a step down, I'm going to give back. It's like, okay, so I'm your poor man's child, so I'm not part of your career journey. Is that so? You're taking a hiatus from your career, not growing your journey, which I just think is absolute bullshit. So I think we need to change some of the we do need to change some of the language as to how we are ascribing and recruiting for people. So I think that's the first thing. The second thing that's worth looking at is, what are you trying to achieve? You want to do less with more, and we know, like this kind of thing back here, this graphic that's on, there is just so much. Focus on one. What is it that you want to achieve, right? So is it retention your pain point? Is it data your pain point? Is it telling the story of success? One, just one, not them all. I can see them all here, they're everywhere. One. What is one that is going to either, A, has low-hanging fruit that you can give an immediate response? So, which is why I talk about job adverts, position descriptions, the likes of that. If retention is one of your issues or recruitment is one of those issues, tweak it, change it. The second part to that is, it's easy when you start pulling data that you'll find more rabbit warrens. You'll find more. Don't get bogged down. Create a parking lot, shove that data to the side and say, okay, there's more data, because if not, you're going to go, oh my gosh, I've got to do that. Oh my gosh, I've got to do that. Focus on your one and work with that, whether that's with technology, whether that's with systems, whether that's with people. Just one and work back from it. Happy to chat. Reach out to me. Happy to chat.
Yep, of course. Thank you so much. Yep, so I hope that answers your questions. And of course, if you would like to have a deeper understanding and more conversation about it, so we are going to send this presentation out in 1 to 2 business days with the recording. Just grab us and then we can surely help you with that. Okay, we got one last questions here. So that's a very important but easy question. So with ELMO software, so what's the price point for NFP? And
I love it. Let's get it on record.
My suggestion is that you talk to your Connecting Up contact in the first instance. Look, it's how long is a piece of string, because you saw all the different products we have. How many of those are you interested in? How many employees you have? How many? So there's a number of moving parts. However, having said that, we have arranged a special discounting rate for members of Connecting Up. So my strongest recommendation is talk to your Connecting Up contacts, and they'll reach out to Narita, and we can work with you on that to pull something together for you.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much for your time today. It's been absolutely brilliant.
Thank you so much, Robert. So I'll just take this 1 minute just to share my screen, just to echo with Robert's saying. So feel free to contact us for the experience or demo or some of the products features. I guess most of you are seeing my screen now. So this is a Connecting Up page. So inside the page, you can just type ELMO with the product, type product, ELMO, and then you get here. Connecting Up members, you can save up to 30% of the ELMO software purchases. So today's presentation is really about how to give you some solutions in regarding to the retention, etc. With ELMO software, I believe there's many different kinds of features can help you with that. But of course, it really depends what are the most important things for you, and then how we could help in order to help with the retention and all the HR things. All right.
Okay.
Lovely. Thank you so much
for having us. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you, Monica. Thank you, Robert. It's really good
Bye.
to have you.
Thank you. Thanks,
Goodbye.
everybody. Thanks for joining. Bye.
Bye.
We crash 11, how do we?
Yeah, I was like, is this the right?